Welcome, everybody, to the Eat, Pray, Faith podcast with Dr. Tracy. That's me. I am your host, and I'm so excited to welcome back my very good friend. And what I would say, one of the first people that I really followed on the political front because of her Christian faith, her unbiased opinion, her incredible research, and just understanding the topics at hand. So I always tried to stay out of the political realm, Mary Grace, but I jumped right into it then. But Mary Grace, she is here. She is the founder and owner of Mary Grace Media and also the host of the Mary Grace Show. Today we're going to be talking about grassroots responsibilities in the Maha movement and some other things and some words of wisdom for Mary. So welcome back. I'm so glad you're here.
It's a pleasure to be here. Always love joining up with you, Tracy. I love what you're doing.
Well, I think we are on, different sides of the same issue, right? I mean, everything comes back, I feel, in this
Hmm.
health to, who's in charge and who's setting the precedent from the top down. But really, I think you and I align with the grassroots movement and what we can do in our own communities and what it takes when moms and dads choose not to stay silent. So that's a big thing. But I'm going to let you talk on a few things. I know you had some, just some words of wisdom and topics you want to talk about. So let's just start with the first one.
Sure. One of the things that has been impressed upon me in recent years, I've been deep into the political space for about 10 years now as a commentator, as I would say an analyst. And I've been watching the evolution of MAGA and now MAHA. And there there's something that I've noticed that is a prevalent attitude across this movement, and that is there's a tendency to want to relegate the responsibility and the results to one or two or a group of people. And I think that is not that is not advised. And the reason for that is because each person has been given agency and free will. And as Americans, especially, we're an individualistic society. We're not pluralistic. But sometimes when I see people and their attitudes toward a leader like Trump, there is this tendency because he's so highly capable and because he's so charismatic and because he's proven as somebody who gets results. There's a tendency to think, oh, good, now he's in office, he's going to fix everything, and that I think that's a dangerous tendency, regardless of who is in office. It doesn't matter where you fall politically. If you're looking at a person or a group of persons to do that, to manage you and your life and all of the things that are important to you, there you're going to set yourself up for disappointment and maybe even heartache. And I think we're walking through a perfect example of that right now as we see the disclosures and the revelations of what's coming out of the DOGE investigations. We have a team that is going into all of these agencies, all of these big government agencies, many of them directly tied to healthcare. And we are seeing evidence of massive, massive grifting and money laundering and deception. And I liken it to finding out that your longtime partner or spouse has been cheating, adultering, drinking, gambling, lying to you all this time. And the collective letdown and the collective rage that people have about this cannot go unnoticed. And I think that I don't want to sound like I'm victim blaming because I'm not. But I think everybody has had a tendency over the years to take at face value what these organizations say that they've been doing. For example, USAID. I think a lot of people thought that we were legitimately rendering aid overseas, when that's actually not even what it means. It's Agency for International Development. Turns out it's like a front for the CIA. And it's just they're using taxpayer dollars to advance, in many cases, what is presented as American interest, which could range from anything from running drag shows in Guatemala to watering poppy fields in Afghanistan. I'm not kidding. And and paying off media and training media to be to propagate propaganda. And so, this is an important time in our nation and really worldwide, because it is, to me, a learning opportunity. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to take what we're seeing at a massive scale. And we're looking at the 30,000-foot view, and then we're being zoomed in to a granular level. And it is so important because, whether we knew it or not, I think every one of us had that tendency to trust that our government, that our media, that all of these agencies that we put at least a little bit of faith in, that they let us down. And let's not forget that some of them are churches, a lot of them, church groups, church organizations. And so if there's anyone out there who's saying, "Oh, I knew that all along," well, no, you didn't know. You didn't know the details. You didn't know the extent. You didn't know how much money these organizations were getting. You didn't know to the dollar. You may have suspected that there was fraud. But going back to the point of individual and personal responsibility, I think that this is a watershed moment in the history of our nation. We are coming up on 250 years as a nation, and we are in a second American Revolution. And it's a revolution against the blob, against the elite, against the money class. But it's also, if we choose, it's a revolution toward personal responsibility, to make sure that not only are we holding these people and these organizations accountable, but that we are holding ourselves accountable for being watchmen and watchwomen on the walls, and making sure that nothing like this ever happens again, because we were asleep at the wheel. And
Mhm.
I think the last 4 or 5 years in particular has revealed that and made people aware of that, especially on the health front, on the school front. What the heck are they doing with our kids in the classroom? All of that. And this is taking it up to another level.
Mhm.
And it's an opportunity. It's as heartbreaking it is as it is, as much rage as it's inducing. It is also an opportunity. And we personally, each one of us, each one listening today, can take that opportunity and, have a little come to Jesus time and think, okay, how does this affect me personally? How was I responsible for any of it? And how can I personally get through this and come out a better person? How can I guard myself? How can I protect my mind? How can I control my emotions? How can I focus on the health of my family and myself and my kids, anybody that I'm in charge of? How can I use this for good?
Mhm. Well, I'm gonna comment on that because unpacking a lot,
I
with
I know I went on.
that's okay. No, it's all right because it was a good summation of what we're saying. You have this whole exposure of things. So let's just start back 5 years ago,
Sure.
right? 2020, when it seemed the whole world woke up between 2020 and now.
Yeah.
You know, I go back to prior to I've always been awake. I've never trusted the government. I've always known about fluoride in the water. From as long as back as I can remember, but the light bulb went off for the 70% of Americans who considered people like me crazy. They would say, I'm a conspiracy theorist, anti-vax, Bible thumping. Like, think of all of the terms that now are like the cool kids club terms. Like, if you say, yeah, I'm anti-vax because I know so much, everyone's like, that's brilliant now. It's brilliant. You're brilliant. 5 years ago, I couldn't get into mom groups. Like they were like, that's her. Don't talk to her. She doesn't vaccinate her kids. Her kids are going to kill your kids.
Right.
Here we are 5 years later, the 70%, 80%, whatever has woken up, of who is chosen to wake up. And they're like, hold on, we can't trust all these things. And so now it's like the perfect time. It's the perfect time. However, those people that just woke up, and this is not a criticism. I'm so glad. Welcome. At one time I was asleep long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. But the mentality of the sit back and take care of me is still there. So it's like I'm awake. I want to be able to make choices for my family, but I also want you to put laws in place so I don't have to make choices. I want you to put laws in place to protect me from having to make choices. And it's like, I see this rolling out, right? And I don't think we're going to see as many changes as we think we are. Now, the fact that RFK actually got in, that's a miracle in itself. Like I was like, never thought it would happen, prayed for it, like hoping for it. But at the end of the day, he's not going to save me. My choices still come down to, okay, I'm glad everybody finally figured out there was BHT and red dyes in cereal, which has been there for like 50 years. And why, like we never gave our kids cereal growing up and, have deflected that for as long as possible. I have a course from 10 years ago where I talked about ingredients in food and how to read food labels, polysorbate 80, BHT being an explosive, canola oil from rapeseed oil, which was at the EPA level, an industrial lubricant. Like I've talked about all these things for decades. Now they're coming to the light. But it's not because the government said so. It was because it was the right time for people to accept the information. Now we're at a level of what are you going to do with it? It's true. And the best way to stop a market spread of anything is not to participate in it. You don't buy it, you don't take it, you don't give it, you just don't. At the grassroots level, you don't participate. It's only a product is only successful if people actually buy into it. So I go back to personal responsibility, and there was a post out by actually a friend of mine who was talking about taking the jab. And I'll just give you a little story of my husband and I, right? He's lived with me for 16 years. He knows me. He knows me at my core, right? Recently, he's become a journalist, reporter for the local paper. And I'm always a grassroots movement person. I, stood up with all the school districts against the masking and the vaccines and all of it. Like anything that comes across my plate at the local level, I'm all in. I went to our state capitol. I spoke from the steps of the state capitol with the senators, the legislators. I went and met with them. Like I'm a grassroots girl. I can't wait for some government agency to make a change. The change starts at my table in my house. So my husband comes across this whole fluoride removal of fluoride from the water. Now, the town that I grew up in, Altoona, removed fluoride from the water a couple decades ago. Like that happened. The town that I currently live in right now has not done it yet. And actually in 2013 or 14, it came up. And through mass public comment, the public saying, don't remove fluoride. Oh my gosh, our teeth will fall out. Like this is what happened. So they chose not to remove the fluoride at that time. Now we have this new surge of fluoride recognition again, that it's a neurotoxin, carcinogen, all the things, right? RFK's up there. He's talking about it, children's self-defense, all the things. And now it's come up again. But through red tape, we have to wait for a process to actually unplug the machine. And there's still a time for public comment. And I'm just waiting for the public comment. I want to see what people are going to say because I'm going to be loud this time because I actually live here. But my point is, my husband wrote an article and I said, it's a neurotoxin. Like, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I want to find the truth. He's like, I want to research this. He could only get so far, but he actually found out like how it got into the water, that it was never even tested, that it was just an opinion of somebody who made a correlation about some kids in Texas who had fluoride in the water at a certain level and they didn't have cavities, but that also found that they fudged the data, blah, blah, blah. Here we are all these years later, poisoning ourselves with fluoride in the water. He finds all this out. He prints the truth and says, hey, this shouldn't be in our water. and our local people need to do something, which they're trying to do. So this is where we are. My point to that was 16 years. And he would send me texts recently and be like, "Did you know this about fluoride?" And send me a text. I'm like, "Yes." And then he would send me another text and he'd be like, "Da-da-da." I was like, "Yes." My point is, you can live in a house with somebody, right? And I can believe a thing and know a thing and preach a thing. And it doesn't mean that my spouse or anybody else in the house is going to get into their psyche until there is a turning point for them that clicks it on. And that, I think, right now is this administration. I think it is turning on that turning point for people. But I
Mhm.
also think there's a sit back and wait and take care of me that we haven't overcome yet. There's this level of like stepping up and stepping in and doing the hard. And it's hard when you give up your Fruit Loops. It's hard when you don't eat the sugar. It's hard when you have to learn to read labels. It's hard when you have to pay $3 more for a loaf of bread that's not sprayed with glyphosate. It's hard when you have to get your own chickens. It's hard when you have to grow your food. I don't know if we're ready for that, Mary Grace. What do you think?
I I don't know. I mean, yes and no. I think that I'm thinking of this expression, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And that's clearly the case with your husband. And I had a similar situation with a family member who has been eating a certain way all her for years, and has been even just, you can look at her and see there's some metabolic imbalance, and she's thought that she was very healthy, similar to what I was doing before I switched over to a meat-based, high ketogenic, high fat diet. And I was mentioned something about it a few months ago when I was talking to her, and no interest. Nope, nope, can't do that. Don't do that. And then she called me last week and started asking me about it. And it's one of those things where, of course, I had so much grace, because when somebody is ready to make a change, and I think this is an object lesson for anybody. For example, people like you, people like me, who knew that things were bad and that you couldn't trust the government and all the big food and big pharma and all these agencies. And but as people are coming to this awareness, the last thing we want to do is say, "Well, I tried to tell you that 5 years ago." We don't want to do that. We want to say, "Oh, tell me more." And it's challenging to do that. But going back to what you're saying about people not wanting to do the work, I think there is a tendency to that. And I think what it comes down to is that when somebody has enough of a why, uh, then they're going to make that change, make that leap. And unfortunately, for some people, it does come down to pain. If there's the pain of sickness, if there's the threat of losing a family member, losing a job, or even the pain of having lost somebody, sometimes that's what it takes. And hopefully we won't get to that point. Hopefully not everybody will. I think watching what happened over the last 4 or 5 years 100% has had an impact on people, and hopefully help them to avoid running off the road, because they've watched so many other people do it, and they've watched trusted officials drive people into ditches, in the name of helping them, and in the name of doing it for the good of everybody else. I think the hypocrisy and the disingenuous nature of our trusted officials has become more glaringly obvious. That being said, look at 9/11, look at the Patriot Act, look at COVID, look at how people responded when they were put in a position of fear. And that is one of the biggest drivers of action, and is a heightened state of anxiety or fear or emotion. And that is where we have to take a step outside of what we're seeing and protect our minds, control our emotions, and make rational decisions. And in some cases, it has to be very intentional. You almost have to be able to step outside of yourself and look at the situation and say, this is happening. This is what I know. This is what I found out. And instead of going into paralysis, instead of going into that shock state, which is somebody take care of me, somebody put me in the ambulance and take me out of here. We have to get past that and do like a little biohack in our brain and realize like I am the person that has to take me out of this situation. And that's a really high level operation that takes place. Um, and I have an example when my niece is 24 and she lives in Boone, North Carolina, and she was in the hurricane. Her house was surrounded by water. She sent us a video the night that the rain was coming down. We immediately got on the phone with her, her mom, me, everybody, saying, "You need to pack a bag. You need a life jacket, and you need to be ready to evacuate. This is really serious." And they didn't have to evacuate. It was a miracle that they didn't, because the next morning when they went out, she was with her roommate. Uh, they went out and they saw the utter devastation around them. Houses gone, roads looking like meteors had hit them. Uh, Insane levels of devastation. And she looked at her roommate, and they had no phone, no water, no electricity, nothing. And she looked at him and said, "Nobody's coming for us. We got to figure this out." And I was really proud of her, 23 years old at the time.
Yeah.
But I think it's a really good illustration, because yes, there are emergency crews out there somewhere. Yes, there is government, but that whole situation in North Carolina is a microcosm of what we need to understand as human beings. We have God, we have our faith, we have our faculties that God has given us, and we have good sense if we're going to use it. But in her case, I think it's a good extreme example, because had she sat there, had she gone into a state of shock and sat there and waited for government to show up, they would have starved. They would have died of thirst. And so they had to figure out what to do. And many people are in that situation.
Right.
Um, Many people are in that situation. And so, you know, we um we have to be aware of that. Because what we don't want is another Patriot Act. We don't want a nutritional Patriot Act. We don't want more regulation. We don't want to
Exactly.
give up more of our freedoms because now we know about fluoride. We want less regulation rather than more. And it's a little hard to square with what Trump is doing right now with all of the executive orders, because it looks like he's doing the opposite. However, I think that we have to be careful about judging that as the standard, because he's encountering a situation where the patient is bleeding out and he has to stop the bleeding.
Right.
That's what he's doing. So it is extreme, but I don't think it's not all forever. And that's an important distinction. But for individuals, we have to avoid the temptation of saying, we want that executive order having to do with food, that executive order having to do with healthcare. We don't necessarily want all of that written into law. We
Right.
want common sense, especially federal law. We want solutions at the personal grassroots level. Like, I want to be able to choose what kind of milk I buy. I want to be able to choose what kind of eggs I buy. All of that.
You
Um,
want to have the ability to have chickens and eggs. I mean,
Yeah.
the regulations that were put in place over food that he is over anything that he is overturning were things that took away freedoms at the
Yeah.
grassroots level and put the choice at the federal government level and said, this is what we say you choose. So that's dictatorship. That's not democracy.
Right.
And I think what I see him
Yeah.
doing is saying these things are gone. Like we got to put
Yeah.
the power back to the people.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with Roe v. Wade, right? People flipped out when Roe v. Wade
Yeah.
was overturned. And I'm like,
Hmm.
I can't believe these people got so upset. I'm like, they just put it back to the state level. You have
Right.
power now to vote if you want to kill babies. You can go
Hmm.
vote for it now at your state level.
And
It's
that's what
not,
that's what I want to say is I want people to understand the difference that he's not ruling by edict. He's
right.
actually reversing. Like it looks, we have to be careful that we don't conflate the method with the outcome
Yes.
is I think what I wanted to say. Because if we, it's a slippery slope, and we don't want to be a people who are governed by executive fiat. We don't. So we have to be very careful about that. As much as I'm applauding the things that he's doing, again, stop the bleeding. I mean, he's in a major we're in our country is in a major, like, level 1 trauma with potential mass casualties, already casualties that have happened. And so he really, I mean, he and his team, if you're looking at a wartime scenario, they are on the front lines, pulling wounded and bleeding to safety.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing. And so I would just caution people from taking this phase of President Trump's operation and thinking that it's a long-term solution. Things have to change at the local, state, grassroots level. Education, for example, that's a perfect example. He's not doing away with the Department of Education because he hates education. He's actually doing it because he loves education and values it. And he wants to kick that responsibility back to the states and to the localities, which is where it always should have been, and
Right.
also shine a spotlight on the degradation that has occurred whenever the federal government gets their hands into any institution. There's so much waste, there's so much fraud, there's so much abuse. During COVID, children were forced to wear masks well beyond when the rest of society stopped doing it.
Mhm.
And a lot of people don't realize that it is directly tied to federal government money that was granted to the schools. The federal government, the HHS, had the schools handcuffed to doing whatever they said to do around COVID for fear of losing that money. The HHS would have clawed back that money that the schools had already allocated had the kids not kept wearing masks. I
Well,
don't think people realize that.
yeah, I mean, Pennsylvania, exactly what you're saying. So we had a mandate of masking the January after the entire world was a mess. That's when I went in and fought. And basically, what happened
Yeah,
is they had to have a care plan in place when this all happened. And if you established a care plan, then you received the federal funding, which you had to abide by your care plan regardless of what the mandates were.
yeah,
Story short, the care plan in our state was like, oh, you had to wear a mask all the time. Yeah, no, that wasn't happening.
yeah.
So that's where I went, and I'm like, I mean, we got pushed so hard at the state level in our school that they tried to make a child saying no to wearing a mask a 504 disability, which is in the violation of the Civil Rights Act. So I was like, if you don't want a civil case, y'all are going to step down. You're going to back up
Hmm.
because
Interesting.
yeah, they tried to make an opt-out form a medical issue, a disability. So it would be like me saying, I have allergies to pollen. So therefore I don't want to sit next to the window in the classroom. And the teacher would be like, "Oh, okay, move over here." There was no special accommodations made that I had
Hmm.
to another classroom. I didn't have a disability, But what they tried to do when I said my kid's not wearing a mask, they actually had the special education director call all the people and push it to a 504. This happened. I was like, no, 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 no. So that was how far they tried to take it because they didn't want to lose their funding. And I
They
mean,
would actually they
okay.
would have gotten more funding if it had been a
Oh,
504.
it was so ridiculous at the time. I look back now and I'm like, every person that was involved in that in our school level locally should be ashamed of themselves. You should be
Yeah.
embarrassed to show your face because how silly the government made them look. And they just bowed down to it, every
Yeah.
single one. And I mean, I live in this town. I honestly don't care what people think of me. I mean, I think that's true all the way around the world, but in
Yeah.
my own town. I
Yeah.
was the one. And I mean, my kids lost friends because parents wouldn't let my kids be with their kids because they were so upset that I was taking such a stance. I'm like, you don't realize what you're giving up by doing this. You have no idea what this is going to do to our community, to our children, to our society, to our state if you bow down. And
Yep.
yesterday I was at a basketball game. And I walked into the school and I'm like, I've been here before. And I was like, oh, this is the school where I almost got arrested. When I came in, they called the police on me because I wouldn't wear a mask into the meeting. And I'm like, what are you arresting me for? There is no mandate in the United States for masking. It's only in this state. And it's not even a mandate, which a mandate's not even a legal term. It was made
Yeah.
up. Like, we
Yeah.
could go down this rabbit hole. I'm sorry to digress, but
No, 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 no. I had the same thing. I had that all the time. And you tell people, first of all, this was never voted on. There was no law passed. When people would say, "Oh, it's the law," no, it's not.
not a
There
law.
is no law. There is no law. Do you understand how laws get passed? This
No,
is
they
not
don't.
it.
That's the problem. See,
And
we
and
don't
yeah,
learn. Yeah.
and they look at you and they're just doing their job. And this is the key that I think, and this is the attitude. Let's bring this wagon back around to the original attitude, which is I just want somebody else to do it. And this is a dangerous attitude. We think about our revolutionary ancestors. We think about the settlers who came to this country and broke new ground in the West. And if they had had that attitude, we wouldn't have a country, literally. If they sat back and said, "This is somebody else's job. Let somebody else do this," because it was life or death. And I think that we need a little bit more of an understanding of that as a young nation that's about to turn 250 years old. That's a young nation. And if we're going to survive, I think that people have to get a little bit more of a taste of what it means to keep a nation alive. And it doesn't involve sitting back and outsourcing your common sense
Right.
and your medical decisions. That is the worst thing you can do. The other part of that is outsourcing your medical decisions to what an insurance company says they'll pay for.
Oh, don't
That's one
care.
of the stupid, I'm just going to go out there. It's one of the stupidest decision making matrices ever.
It's a
When
decision made on fear, to your point. Ask a
Yeah.
person why they have health insurance. You know what they'll say? Just in case. I did an
Yeah.
entire podcast on health insurance. Do you know the top 6 reasons that people choose health insurance are the least amount of claims on a health insurance policy? The top 6. So if I say, well, just in case I get into a car crash, the likelihood of you needing health insurance from a car crash is so small. It's not even on the top. It's like at the bottom percent
Hmm.
of why people would put a claim on health insurance. You know what they claim for? Mental health, number 1, gastric health, number 2. Like people that have too much stress because we're overworked, because we don't have enough nutrition for our brain, because we drink
Hmm.
fluoride in our water and we poison our neuroplasticity of our brain because we're self-killing ourselves and self-poisoning. So we need these things. Why are we on gastromeds? Because we don't eat the right food. We eat processed, we eat fast food, we eat red dyes, and I don't want to lose choice either. But the issue that has come upon us is in our society, we like easy and convenient. And if it's not those two things, people don't want to do it. And people don't like to suffer. I mean, nobody likes to suffer, but so much so that we have a drug to repress every single thing you might suffer with. Oh, I got heartburn. Here's a pill. It'll take care of it. Oh,
Yeah.
I have a headache. Pill, take care of it. Instead
Right.
of being like, why do I have a headache? Could it be the fact that I'm dehydrated? Maybe I'm magnesium.
Hmm.
Like, let's not tap into the physical discernment of our body that God gave us. Let's
Yeah.
repress it and keep doing the same thing that we've always done so that we can get sicker and sicker and sicker so that we can actually use that
Yeah.
work disease management policy that we all have. I don't have health insurance, never had it, don't want it, will never pay for a system that waits for me to get sick so they can ride on the amount of money I paid in and everybody else's to repress my symptoms or cut out organs, which is their only solution that they have, never to guarantee me that I'll be any healthier. It's a racket. It is such a
Yeah.
racket. It's one of the worst things we ever did. I mean, the Department of Education was established in 1979. What did we do all the years before? Kids were smarter then.
They knew everything. They learned every subject. They knew Latin. They knew how to write. How to write an
Reading a
essay.
document, right?
How to do mental math, how all of it. It was all there.
Mm.
And it's and they knew how to think. I mean, people could think critically. And that is just that's a really it's hard to see the way people are now. We saw this when my dad was in the hospital back in September and October, when he had uh, when he had the stroke. He was getting high blood pressures, and it was we had this constant back and forth with the doctors, with these highly quote educated people. They just wanted to medicate him every single time
Yeah.
they come in. His pressure's high, let's give him this. And then we had to tell them, we had to talk them off the ledge every time and say, okay, well, how about we get him lying down, get his feet elevated. Let's make sure he's hydrated. Like we had to go through the checklist with him every time. Let's review. Even though like they're the professional, we're not. We have to review with them. These are the things that tend to spike his blood pressure. How about we do some things to mitigate that and get it down, and then make a decision about let's wait 15 minutes, let's check in 20 minutes, a half an hour, come back. And it was constant. The same thing when he would get anxiety. They just wanted to medicate him constantly. And then one day when he was at the rehab facility, his blood sugar very soon after a meal was 200 and something. And I won't even get into what they were feeding him, but my nephew was there, and I got a call and they said his blood sugar is like 201 or something, and we have to give insulin when it gets to a certain point. And I said, you're not giving him insulin. When did he last eat? And they said, oh, he ate like 30 minutes ago. I said, well, what do you expect? Why would you not expect somebody with type 2 diabetes to have a sugar of at that rate, especially given what you're feeding him? That's just normal. He's not active. He's probably not hydrated enough. And so I need you to wait at least an hour. And first of all, he doesn't even take insulin. Like I had to tell them all that. And I had to tell the nurse, no, you're not giving him insulin. He is not an insulin dependent diabetic. He's never had insulin. Crazy.
It
And
is great.
so, yeah, so going back to, just the critical thinking, that's my point, is I am constantly in a place of walking people through the exercise of critical thinking. People who have advanced degrees, who are more trained than I am in the specialty that we're supposed to be relying on them for. I'm the one that's walking them through the process of critical thinking. And it's just, my sister had a situation like that too, where all the machines were going off and in my dad's room during the night, and she was standing there, trying to get him calmed down and everything. 30 minutes into it, the nurse walks in, and she let him have it. She said, "Well, it's about time you got here." And he said, "I'm busy." And she said, "You have two other patients." And she said, "By the time you hear these machines, it's too late. You should be checking on him because a machine is a lagging indicator." And it just like that was our life the whole time he was in the hospital. And but it's indicative of where we are as a society. And let's go back to where we started this conversation, which is people have to take personal responsibility. People have to think critically. They have to work out for themselves, and use wisdom. The Bible says, if anyone lacks wisdom, ask for it, and God will freely give it to you. That's right in the book of James. So all we have to do is ask. But the worst thing we can do is to put our complete and total faith in a system or a person, whether it's Donald Trump or Elon Musk or whatever flavor of politician you think is going to save you and your family. That's your first mistake. And we have to learn, we have to go back to a mentality that our founders had, which was, I'm here. I have the God given abilities that got me here, and I'm going to apply them day in and day out, not only for my survival and for thriving, but for the survival of the generations to come after me. And that's really how God wants us to think. He wants us to think generationally. And that's another issue. People are selfish. They're very self-centered. All that matters is them. What
Mhm.
they want, what their immediate comfort is, what their immediate need is. And this may be um a little aside that may hurt some people's feelings, but I think a big indicator of that attitude is the number of fake service dogs that we see nowadays in the store. I mean, people want to bring their dog with them, and they've come up with a way
Yes.
to fake it so that they can pretend that they have a service dog. Like some lady's dog jumped up on my leg today in a store, and it had a little service dog vest on, like an Amazon service dog vest. And I'm just thinking, if you want to bring your dog, fine, but don't be so selfish that you have to pretend and lie to everybody that it's a service dog. It's not, it's a pet,
Right.
it's a companion, and that's okay. But to me, it's very selfish. It's indicative of the attitude that people have today, which is everybody has to cater to me because of whatever made up thing I have. Um, and that's it may seem like a small one, but again, it's like everybody's doing it.
I
And all
think
of a
it's
sudden,
crazy.
yeah.
And it's not even, I mean, I see it all the time. I'm a dog lover. I'm a huge dog. I have three
Oh,
dogs.
yeah,
You know,
we love
we're a dog
dogs.
lover. And just to make sure everybody knows that you and I are both Trump fans. We love Trump. We think what he's doing is awesome.
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
want this to come off like we don't, I mean, my goodness, my son
Oh,
gave out little Trump Valentine's ducks to all of his Valentines in school. That's what we got. That's what he wanted. That's what he wanted. He's like, I want Trump ducks for Valentine's Day to give out at the Valentine's party. And I was like, love you so much. I was like, I hope you don't get expelled, but here you go. So we ordered those. But I mean, I even with that said, I agree with you. I personally love watching what Trump's doing right now.
love it. Love
Don't
it.
don't want or need him to do it forever for me, but you're right. You put it better than anyone I've heard. You got to stop the bleeding. And then once you stop the bleeding, which is the catastrophic, right? It's the allopathic stop the bleeding, patch it up. You don't just send that person off and be like, good luck to you. I hope those wounds heal. No, there is
Yeah.
a care plan put in place. So everyone needs to be thinking about, all right, Trump stopped the bleeding. Everyone's stopping the bleeding. What is our care plan that we put in place now at home? Now that there's
Yeah.
these things on the movie theater screen that everybody knows and more to come. Now that I am aware, although it's going to be hard, although it's going to be different, although I may
Hmm.
stumble and I don't know what I'm doing and I'm going to have to figure it out. What is the plan for long-term success for our country, for our children, for our own personal health? How do we start at the home level with the changes that we want to make spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically without saying, oh, government, I need you to make a law so it's illegal for this? Because anytime Congress makes a law, we lose a freedom. It doesn't matter which side it's on. When there is a regulation put in place, there's a freedom taken. And that's my personal belief of like, we don't need the government putting their hand into our living room. I don't care what
Hmm.
side you're on. I had my son in a school one time, it was a Christian school, and the teacher took it upon herself to say to the whole classroom, in not so many words, if your parents are telling you that Santa Claus is real, they're lying to you, and I won't lie to you. Now, it was a Christian school, and I understand that they wanted the children's eyes on Jesus, as it should be. But I called them up and I said, I don't care who you are. Don't you ever cross my living room, ever. Like, don't ever do that. You don't have the right to do that
Hmm.
or have a say on how I raise my children. And I will correct it with the Holy Spirit, not you. You're not my Holy Spirit. Like, I don't care who it is. So I really think parents need to get tough in that area of don't violate my rights in so many ways. But we got to toughen up as a society. You know, I
We do. We do. We also have to remember this. This is, I taught kindergarten. And one of my rules of thumb when I was outsourcing things for the classroom, toys, puzzles, things like games, I always went to the least common, the I always had to picture the child who was most likely to destroy it, whether they meant to or not. So I had to, there was always a litmus test. If so and so touches this, will it break? Yes, not buying it. And it was partly because you don't want that child to feel bad, but also, I mean, you have to apply that. And how does that apply to what we're talking about right now? It has to do with the fact that there is always going to be, regardless of how good you think a law or regulation is, there's always going to be somebody that messes it up. There's going to be that HOA president that has no ability to think critically or logically, that is on such a power trip that there's no gray area, there's no wiggle room. They will just go on a search and destroy mission when they're given a little tiny bit of power. And when it comes to passing laws or regulations, I would encourage everybody always to picture that HOA president with that law in their hands. And how would that person interpret it? How will that person manage that power? Because when you pass a law or a regulation, you you are always opening yourself up to the eventuality of that person being in a position of interpreting and applying that law. And it's funny when we talk about an HOA president, but now let's bring it down to what your kids have to put on their face, what they might be asking them to put in their bodies, et cetera, et cetera. When you have a person who thinks like that in charge of interpreting a rule where there is no wiggle room, where they have a tendency or a penchant toward control and ruling with an iron fist and overall destruction. And then you bring an ideological viewpoint in. If they don't agree with your politics, if they don't agree with the bumper stickers on your car, that is a recipe for disaster. And that to me is a good rule of thumb when you're thinking about legislation, when you're proposing a rule or a law. Just always think, what is the worst case scenario in the hands of the wrong person? Because it seems right now, but what happens if that HOA president gets a hold of it? And anybody that's ever dealt with an HOA knows what I'm talking about. I mean, we're talking tyranny at a level that that makes Maxine Waters and Adam Schiff look like Mr. Rogers.
But then there's the level that for the convenience, for whatever reason, people are willing to sign into that HOA. They're
I
willing.
know.
They
Yeah.
up in there and they're like, you know what? I will sacrifice these freedoms because I want this.
Mm-hmm.
We have to stop doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in our
Yeah.
time that we have left, we have a few minutes. Can you give us your words of wisdom over some things that we should be doing, looking at maybe like a 1, 2, 3, or even just
Mm-hmm.
high level, please?
Yeah, I would be in prayer. Because we're in a place as a nation. Um, maybe you're not American, maybe you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, not us, but stay with me. America is in a place as a nation, we are in a watershed moment where, especially if you're a Christian, you have an opportunity to see this through on a generational level and to take part in a transformation that is not only going to help you walk into your destiny, but will help your children and their children after them. And one of the most important keys to that is your own health. If you've been putting off getting healthy, if you're thinking again, let's wait until RFK fixes things. No, that's at such a macro scale that it may never trickle down to you. Some of the things he's doing may never actually even have an impact on you for a few years. So I would say apply the break glass in case of emergency scenario to your own life and look at the attitude that Trump has. He is working as though every day is his last term, his last day in office. And so for you yourself, what is it that you know you need to do? And how can you apply that mentality? Today is my last day in office. What am I going to do today to get my house in order? So that I can be everything that God chose me to be on this planet in this time for this generation. And what impact is it going to have for the generations after me? That's what I would do. I would mirror his attitude and his actions right now, meaning President Trump and his team. I don't think he's sleeping in the in the Oval Office, but I'm pretty sure Elon is like sleeping on a couch right next door, because of the urgency. It's there's an urgency right now. We're in a season of grace, I think, where God is allowing our intentions and our actions to manifest and magnify. And so don't sleep on this. Don't wait until next year
Right.
to get your house in order. But that would be my exhortation. I didn't give you a 1, 2, 3, but I think that it really is an exhortation. Pay attention to what God has given you and take the reins of your own life and take that responsibility.
And do it one at a time. Don't get overwhelmed. You don't have to change everything. I always tell people
Right.
you didn't get sick overnight and you don't get healthy overnight. It's a process
Yeah.
of people have health goals, and I always try to break that right off at the beginning. Your health goals are always going to change. My health goals when I was 20 are so much different now that I'm 50, right?
Yeah.
But you are a consequence or a product of your habits. So it is
Yeah.
the habits that we embrace every single day that result in the life, in the health, in the mental capacity, in your
Hmm.
walk with the Lord. That's what determines it, not a goal. I can have a goal of reading my Bible every day, but if I don't have a habit of doing it, I'm going to fail every day. I have to make the habit. So, create habits of instead of saying our goal is to clean out our pantry of every processed food, have a habit of having a fresh organic salad with each meal rather than, trying to establish this goal of overturning everything. Sometimes goals can be overwhelming, but habits can be sustained.
Mm,
And that's what you're talking about, generations, right? I always
mhm,
go back to the scripture, train up your children in the ways of the Lord, so when they are older, they do not depart from it. I think that has to do with everything. Your kids are the expression of your best and worst qualities. And they're the
mm.
expression of your best and worst qualities, usually
Yeah.
public. So,
Yeah.
what you say, all of a sudden things come out of their mouth and you're like, that is so me. I'm so sorry about that.
Yeah.
They
That's
do what
so
they
true.
do. Mhm.
Mhm.
So, as you said, start with your house. I always say start right at your own table,
Mhm.
and tell your kids we're going to start right here and show them. And it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
huge. It can just be one thing at a time. Like when my kids leave our home, they will leave knowing they were loved, that sometimes mom wasn't always the best housekeeper, but we loved animals. We gave freely. We always invited people in. We grew our own food. We raised our own food. We tried to do the absolute best we could. And every once in a while, they were allowed to have some crappy food that made mom's head spin. Like that's what they'll take out of it. And I know
Yeah.
that those habits and that grace will carry on for generations. If
Yeah.
we're raised differently, that's what would carry on. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing our generation, right, Mary Grace, the fast
Yeah.
food and Diet Coke generation. We're seeing the fruit of that. Of,
Yeah.
wow, we got a microwave. Wow, we got fast food. Wow, we got aspartame.
Mhm.
Wow,
The fat-free. Yeah, the
well,
fat-free.
Snackwells were delicious, but they weren't healthy. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
now we have to produce new fruit.
Yeah.
And
That's a
we
good way. Yeah.
talk the generations down
Yeah.
from us. And I think for us personally, you and I, we may have the wisdom, but we got to make sure it carries on. And moms talking to daughters and daughters calling moms rather than the pediatrician when little Jimmy has a fever. Like, let's get back to that.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good one. Exactly. Yeah. And just having a network, whether it's the mom or the auntie or the friend, like, I've called you before, like, I don't know what to do.
Okay.
And
We're
that's,
sacrificing Christ. That's what's supposed to happen.
yeah, yeah, it's so important. And I read a lot of historic fiction, and you see just how intertwined and interdependent people were in community, because there was no mass communication. I mean, like if you didn't talk to your neighbor, you didn't talk to anybody, um, or your family, right? There was that was it, and but it was so valuable. Love it or hate it. That's what you had, you know. So I think there is we're in such a good place as a country. We have so much potential, and I want to be here for it. I want to be here. Like I was thinking about Barron Trump. Love that kid. He's going to be president one day. And I was thinking, I'd like to be alive for that. I want to see that. I want to see him walk into the White House.
Yeah.
And that's going to be another 20 years. So I'll be 60 next month. And that's possible. It's possible that I could see him become president.
Yeah.
If
think so,
Yeah.
John. It'll be 20 years, but I hope we make it, right? You and I, and we're gonna be sitting on the porch swing together saying, remember when we talked about this on a podcast? And then we're gonna get a donut just because we can.
and
And it's gonna be not
it
made from glyphosate laden wheat at that
it
time.
yeah, it's going to be fried in tallow. So
That's
we'll be
right.
fine.
Fried in tallow with pure organic sugar. Like it's gonna be,
Yeah.
so
Oh
see,
gosh, yeah.
I see it. But it's
It's
not
going to
gonna
be
be
so
tomorrow.
good. It's going to be so
Yes.
good. And our animals are going to live longer because they're not going to be poisoned with glyphosate and
I know.
vaccines.
I know.
Yeah. So I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful for the future. And we have people like you. We have practitioners who are committed and who are finally getting their day, which is fantastic, that our functional medicine and naturopathic healers are getting recognized and being given a platform. It's amazing. It's
It
really,
is.
really neat.
And it's
Yeah.
going to be amazing for the people who are open to receive it because it's a whole new
Hmm.
world of not
Yeah.
having to suffer, but not being repressed. It's just like
Right.
freedom.
Right.
Well,
And having a doctor who prays, um,
absolutely. Yeah,
and doesn't worship at the altar of science. That's big. It's a big deal.
it
So yeah,
is.
yeah.
Well, I
Thank you.
appreciate you coming on and sharing your views as
Thank you.
I can't express all of the things that you do. Just you have such a
Thank
wealth of
you.
knowledge and such great study and a very open mind and wholesome look at what's going on in our world politically. So that's why I love to have you on. For those who
Thank
want to
you.
follow Mary Grace and catch up with her show, it's in the show notes. Please go subscribe to her
Yeah.
channel. She has such amazing guests on and even health guests like from all over the place. So great resource. I love that she's a daughter of the Lord. And so
Yes.
such a great thing as well, because we don't have many
Thank you.
women out there in the political realm who love Jesus. Like you're all the things. So thanks guys for
Thank you.
make sure that you share this podcast with people who need to hear it. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my podcast. And Mary Grace, I hope to have you back soon. God bless, and we'll see you next time.